Hi, my name is Lisa Varner, and I'm going to discuss with you my applied assignment for Module 7. I will try to summarize this as best as I can because the last one I met my max 15 minutes, so I will try to summarize this one as best as I can. So my table of contents, I'm going to go over this with you real quick. So of course I have the pre-work that's going to go over the topic, prior knowledge, course materials, research, and then, of course, with the research, I'll, post about that, the goods. Um, I'll also talk about the new learning. So what I learned, the evidence from that, the interview and the confirmation email, and the connections to the course materials and the topics that I'll discuss. And the continued inquiry, so the new questions, how I'm going to learn more about the questions I do have, and questions for you guys as well. So now the pre-work. The topic was children on the autism spectrum and how they fit in with our society. And I chose this topic because my nephew Liam is on the autism spectrum, and I watched how my sister struggled to manage his behaviors until she decided to start him in ABA therapy. And the aspect of inclusion I wanted to focus on were how autistic children fit into the school setting and how they are treated by peers and those in the community. And the picture on the right there is of my sister, Christina Chavez, and my nephew Liam. He's a goober. So the interview, I had it with my sister, Christina, and why I chose her was because I watched firsthand what it's like to live with a child on the spectrum. And the background knowledge I do have about autism and children on the spectrum is I've worked with children on the spectrum for the last 3 years and have worked with countless children from one end of the spectrum to the other. While I lived with my sister back in 2018 to 2019, I watched her struggle with Liam's behaviors, and she finally decided to start him in ABA because of those behaviors and the things that she was noticing. And that's where I observed the technician come to the house and work one-on-one with Liam and work through his behaviors. I would oftentimes listen in on the sessions, and my fascination with ABA grew more and more, and that's when I realized I wanted to learn more about what ABA was, and that's why I got into the field. And of course, the course materials, the TED Talk with Stella Young, I'm Not Your Inspiration. Thank you very much. And I used this one because I wanted to get my sister's perspective on if she feels Liam is inspirational because of his disability. And I also included American Institutes for Research with the article Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 40 Years Later. That YouTube video, not an article. I don't know why I said that. But the YouTube video. And I used it because I wanted to know how it is for Liam at school. And what educational accommodations he does receive at school, and are his needs being met there in the school setting. And then my research outside of our course materials was, of course, with the Autism Society, Autism in Your Family. So I wanted to touch base on how autism affects the family dynamic at home, and also with the ADHD and autism spectrum disorder from Chad. My nephew Liam was diagnosed with ADHD, so I thought it would be interesting to look further into how his ADHD diagnosis might affect his focus in school and at home, alongside as a comorbidity with autism. So the evidence, proof in the pudding, is the course confirmation email from my sister. We have a little playful relationship there, and just asking her if she would kind of meet for the interview, and she says, "You betcha." Don't you know? She didn't say that last part, but she said, "You betcha." And of course, with the interview questions, what happened that made you question if Liam had autism? She initially said that he was delayed in his speech. At 2 years old, he was barely saying anything, and also he didn't respond to his name, so that was kind of a red flag. A 2 or 3 year old should be able to look at you when you call them and be able to at least look in your direction when you call their name. The process to get Liam diagnosed, she said it took about 9 months. and she said it was an absolute nightmare because they're military, so they have TRICARE, and TRICARE is just it's a nightmare, for lack of better terms. And the initial reaction to the diagnosis that my sister had when she found out was that basically Liam was just going to have this awful life. I was never going to get married. He wasn't going to have any friends. Um, it was just not going to have basically got the short end of the stick kind of thing. And I asked her before she suspected Liam of being on the spectrum, did she know much about autism and what all it entails? And um, she had took psychology courses before. She was actually in school at one point to get a psychology degree, so she learned a little bit about it from that. But of course, she never thought her own child would, get autism. And what were Liam's behaviors that he engaged in was another question I asked her. So he would engage in, he would hit his head on things, and that's called SIB, or self-injurious behaviors. And he would, he was also aggressive toward other kids as well, but not like hitting, and he would just kind of push, and he would like take things from them. And I asked her if she had ever felt judged or embarrassed while out in public and he engaged in these behaviors. And she said, of course. I mean, initially she did for, the first couple of years. And she, get a lot of stares, a lot of, side eyes, a lot of people judging, obviously. But she learned to just kind of shake it off, shrug it off kind of thing, because it didn't matter what other people thought. What mattered is that she understood what he was going through and she knew how to handle it. So that's where she's at now. And how has ABA therapy helped the family dynamic at home? For her, she has said ABA is just a godsend. It's really helped out with his behaviors, also in schools as well, helping him in school and at home, and just while they're out as well, just knowing how to, engage in appropriate behaviors. And but with Liam being in school, were there any concerns as far as how other kids were going to treat him? And the answer, was of course. Any mom is going to worry about those things. With any child that's not even on the spectrum, you're going to worry about those things because kids can be just downright mean. So of course, that was definitely one of her biggest concerns. But she actually was concerned with how adults were going to treat him too. How were teachers going to treat him? And one of the things that she really likes is that Liam has been in school, in private schools since he started school. So that leads into my next question with the deficiency in support for children with autism in the schools. And she says there's definitely a deficiency, especially in the public school setting, which is why since he started school, he's been in a private school setting, smaller class sizes, and there's just better resources as far as how they interact with him there. Because there's a smaller class size, they're able to give him a little more one-on-one attention. Back when techs were able to be in the schools, because for most states, the ABA technicians, they're not allowed to be in the schools anymore. And that really gave the kids on the spectrum a lot of support, and it kind of took a lot of weight off the teacher's shoulders as well too. And I asked my sister what the biggest concern for Liam was growing up in our society as somebody with autism, and she said she was really concerned with his understanding of just the world as a whole and how he would be able to handle situations out in the real world, like the older he gets. So that's something we covered as well. So new learnings as far as inclusion goes. There's Liam, of course, on a football team. Um, Now, I've learned that those with autism, feeling included does not always come easy. And my nephew Liam has high functioning autism, which means he is self sufficient, verbal, social, and can carry out typical everyday tasks. He goes to school, he sits in a general population classroom, he has friends, plays on a football team. And that's not to say he doesn't encounter children and adults that are not always understanding of his behaviors and mannerisms, but overall, he is included in his community. Now, as far as equity goes, what I've learned when it comes to equity, how it affects those with disabilities, I think about how they are viewed as special when really all they want to be seen is as equals. Those with disabilities can conquer life to the best of their abilities, just like any of us. Someone can be confined to a wheelchair, visually or hearing impaired, or maybe intellectually disabled, but that doesn't mean that they should be denied rights to a proper education or employment. I also can't help but notice that products are not marketed toward those with disabilities. When doing one of my assignments for the universal design, my son brought up that in Spirit Halloween, while we were visiting there, that they don't have wheelchair kits for decorating wheelchairs for Halloween. I mean, imagine how much revenue someone like Spirit Halloween could make if they included those with disabilities. And as far as access goes, this was Spirit Halloween. I mean, look at that. You can't get a wheelchair in and out of there. So access for those with disabilities can be rather difficult at times because not all establishments consider a universal design. So, aisles are tight, and they just don't really take a lot of the space into consideration. So continued inquiries, what I want to learn more about. I want to learn more about how we can help support those with autism better in the schools. I'm curious to know why there is such a disconnect with those students in a special education class compared to those in a general population class. I have been with students in both classes when ABA technicians were still allowed in the schools, and I played two completely different roles in both classes. In the one general population class, I took a back seat, as I should, to allow the teacher to establish instructional control. And I took a front seat in the special education class where I was basically the teacher to my patient, which is, of course, not my job. I would like to discuss with special education teachers about why there is a deficit in the way special education students are taught in comparison to the general population classroom students. Now, questions for you guys. If you know someone with a disability, what is a major obstacle they've encountered in their life? And also, how would you teach your children to be more inclusive to those with disabilities? And on that note, thank you for watching. This concludes my presentation. Ta-ta.